Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 585. Releasing February 8 in Australian cinemas is Force of Nature, The Dry 2, a sequel to the 2021 hit movie The Dry that features the return of Eric Bana as a federal police detective who investigates the disappearance of an informant in the dense Victorian mountain ranges. An engrossing crime thriller that features high stakes in the way of dramatic and genre movie stakes and an engaging central performance by Eric Bana. Force of Nature, The Dry 2 also marks the latest film from prolific director Robert Connolly. Robert, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
Good to talk to you again, Matthew. Fantastic.
It's really interesting, The Dry 2, Force of Nature. What this represents to me is something in a way of lots of big progress in the Australian film industry. This is what I mean about that. Not only was The Dry a highly successful film as an independent feature as well, but here we have a sequel to an independent feature, which in itself is a genre film as well. You don't see that a lot, especially in Australian film landscape. How do you feel on your end in regards to not only being the director, but writer and producer of this movie to be able to deliver something like that to the Australian film public? Because like I said, we don't see that often. And for me, I think it's a great thing.
Oh, thanks so much. Look, Eric and I talk a lot about this. Neither of us have ever done a sequel or a follow-up. We've never, I got a lot of pressure to do a sequel to my kids' film Paper Planes years ago, but that's about the only thing that anyone ever thought there should be a sequel. And there's so many benefits to it. You've got an incredible book that Jane Harper's written that set in a completely different landscape. You're expanding on the character Aaron Falk, from the first film. And you've got this incredible, idea, these 5 women lost in the bush. So there's originality and something new and surprising for the audience, but also things that are quite similar to the first film that give the audience the detective mystery. So we contemplated a lot, whether to do the film. And it wasn't driven by opportunity. It was driven by the fact, it wasn't like, oh, well, The Dry's been a hit, so we can do it. It was driven by ultimately a kind of excitement about the story and the world of it. Like, Eric and I and the team at Made Up Stories, Bruno, Stephen Jody and the gang, we're all getting together and it's kind of like, yeah, there's something, and Jane Harper, there's something here that's exciting. So, no, I'm glad you say that, because I think that it's really certainly been a gift in our careers to get a chance to reprise the character and to go into the Australian landscape again. I mean, to go into the bush, make this film is incredible.
Please support Matt's movie reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. I love cop movies. I'm a big fan of police procedurals and such. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got my Serpico t-shirt.
Very good.
Serpico was a film that really changed my life when I saw it like 20-something years ago. It was a movie that changed the way I saw movies. And what I love about this movie, though, with the character of Aaron Falk, I mean, he's a cop and all cops have a certain moral compass about them. It's what drives them to do what they do. But we really see the psychological impact of what drives Aaron in these movies. In this movie in particular, Force of Nature, there are things going on in the film behind the steely glaze, things going on in his brain that you portray in the film. And he's such a tragic character. When you and Eric kind of approach what Jane Harper has done with that character, do you delve into him more as a character? Do you put further emphasis on backstory? How do you and Eric kind of work on getting Aaron Falk, the cinema portrayal of him, to be not only representative of Jane's writing, but representative of your filmmaking as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's absolutely fundamental to this film that it takes Aaron Falk on a deeper psychological journey. People want to get to know a character in a second film. You've got to take him further. And the book takes him further. And Eric and I had lots of conversations about where's he at? What's he learning? Where is he going? How does the past impact on him? Cinema has an incredible power to weave time together, to show you the past in a way that impacts the present. And a lot of my films do that. And I think Eric has a great kind of capacity to show in a scene how the past has impacted. It's a technical understanding of the storytelling, because on the day you're not imagining the flashback that we've actually shot. He's actually going back into his past. I love what you're saying though about the cinematic portrayal, because I think that what I loved about Jane's book, we've got so much crime work,
Yeah.
film and television gets made. Um, and it's a passion I know of yours, and the kind of cinema you love is probably similar to the cinema I love. We're looking for complexity. We're not looking for black and white, good versus bad, and I think Aaron Falk in Force of Nature is really struggling to understand his role as a detective. I think it's a massive theme, like where is crime? Who commits them? What is crime? Should it be, and so the fantastic conflict that he has with Jacqueline McKenzie's character, his superior officer, Carmen, who is much more of a career detective. This is what we do. We find the criminals, we hunt them down, we catch them, we lock them up. Whereas Falk is a lot more, well, is it really? What is crime? And that's where I think cinema lands. I think it really does give you a chance to be psychologically complex and to show the gray area of the psychology of someone who's a detective. It's fascinating to watch. And certainly we talk a lot about that, Eric and I, in shaping a film like this.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. You mentioned before about delving back into the Australian kind of like nature and all these different, in this case, Force of Nature is very different to what The Dry was. Very different landscape, very different kind of like experience that comes with that. What I really enjoy what you've done with these two Dry films so far is that you are showing the environments as character within themselves and not just landscape. I think too often Australian filmmakers, when they deal with landscape, it seems like sometimes they're filming a tourist ad and not actually filming a movie. They linger a little too long on it. Whereas your films, and I think it has to come down maybe with James writing as well, I'm not sure, but the environments themselves feel like character. There's kind of like there's experience there within the environment within itself. How do you go about making sure that that sticks to the screen, and that when you do delve into these environments, delve into these worlds, it's not done so for just for flash, but it's done so for density, for depth, for to add more to what the characters bring.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. I mean, we're trying to make these epic looking films. We're shooting on these large format cameras now. We're trying to make films so that you have to see them in the cinema because they look massive. But we don't want it to just be picture postcards because, as you say, you can watch that in a tourism commercial.
Yeah.
So I always think it comes back to the landscape as a character, as an actual character in the story, so that you look at the world of the Australian bush and you kind of go, well, what function does it have on this in this scene? In the same way you'd have with a character. What is its role? What is its impact? What is it? And much as you'd have a character's arc through a film building in a crescendo in Force of Nature, this ever-present threat of this storm that is coming, these clouds darkening, the world becoming more claustrophobic, these women lost deep in this jungle where there's almost no light getting through the canopy, has a psychological impact, in the shape of the film. So, but it's a great observation you make. And I think there's always a danger, you're not just making pretty pictures,
Yeah.
but you also do want it to be epic. You want people to come away and go, oh my God, that looks so incredible, but not in a way that is just a kind of like it's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's not like a beautiful photo hanging on the wall that you admire. Cinema should make you feel like it's a world that you're inside, that you, the audience, have been taken by the filmmakers into the world with these characters in this landscape, with the threat, the jeopardy, the beauty, so that you're experiencing it in a more dimensional way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine the goal is not to make people wish that they can go there, but make them believe they are there already, right?
That's it. You're absolutely right. Isn't it? It's incredible. That's what I love about cinema. You go in there, the lights come down. You don't check your phone. You're kind of captured for a couple of hours in a cinema. And I love that feeling when you leave the cinema, the lights come up at the end, and you forgot you were physically in a cinema. You weren't restless. You just were transported into the story through your imagination and the invitation the filmmakers made to investigate the story from that point of view.
When it comes to editing this film, much like the first movie, and much like a lot of your films that you've seen, I'm like all the way back to even Balibo and such, the merging of the past and the present, how the editing kind of merges them both in there. What makes it interesting though with your movies and what I saw with Force of Nature is that never once when I watch it did I find myself lost in the shuffle of the time periods going back and forth. Never once do I
Good.
find it to be any type of like any type of does it take me out of one story by going to the other. They are both, you know, relating to each other, and one kind of like speaks to the other and back and forth again. When it comes to doing that in post-production though, what type of processes do you put into to making sure that that is very seamless? And do you do a lot of, you know, screenings? Do you like to watch your films over and over again to make sure you try to get those beats right and get those cuts right, to make sure that if this is a seamless whole of one story, where, you know, sometimes I think some filmmakers get kind of trapped in trying to create two different stories within the one package, but this does feel like one story but just dives in and out of some different worlds there.
Yeah, we kind of test it with small groups of people and watch it with people. That seems to be the easiest way to do it. You lose your perspective when you're just sitting in an edit suite trying to work it out. But then when you take
Yeah.
it out of there, put it in a little theaterette and invite maybe 10 people and watch it and see whether they're confused or not confused, or you know, it's tricky. It means the edits on my film, you know, take a long time. And I think music is Peter Rayburn's score, he did the dry as well, is kind of awesome, really. And he helps thread it so that you've got one level of the physical moving between past and present in the storytelling, but the music's kind of holding your hand through it. But it's a challenge, and I'm glad to hear you kind of enjoy that experience, because I feel like it's a great device for a genre like this. 3 different time frames that you're moving through, and you're trying to jigsaw puzzle it all together.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, it has its challenges. So, but it's fun if you can pull it off. It's got a real energy to it. I think there's something visceral that happens when you move between past and present. You know, an audience feels yanked. You know, you're in the present with Falk, he's trying to investigate something, there's a storm coming, and bang, you're back in the valley with these women, they're lost. You know, they're trying to work out how to get out, and you know, you're building the threat and the jeopardy and all the time. And then you're further into the past, and his mother's lost in the bush, and he's a kid, and he's trying to, you know, so it's just trying to ramp up the tension amongst all 3 timelines in a concurrent way, you know, is the plan and the ambition of it.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Final question. When it comes to Jane Harper's books with the Aaron Falk character, there are 3. We've got the 2 film adaptations. You know, hopefully, and I'm sure it will, Force of Nature will just be just as successful, if not more, than what The Dry was. If that is the case, is there a very good chance that we could see Exiles, the next book of Aaron Falk, be on the you know, be next on your board of like, you know, upcoming projects? Because I don't know about you, I love the character, I love the worlds, and to be able to kind of wrap that up with that, you know, that 3rd adaptation, I think would be a real cool thing to see.
Yeah, I think let's see how this one goes. I mean, it's really exciting. We got to make a sequel, and it really only happened because of the success of The Dry. You know,
Yeah.
Australian audiences should feel a bit of ownership in many ways, because they really supported it. It was after the pandemic was winding down, cinemas were opening. Incredible time, really, and the Dry's success and the way audiences championed it laid the foundation for Force of Nature. So let's see how it goes. I mean, you know, Eric and I would love to continue to work together. So fingers crossed.
Well, until that time, February 8th, Australian cinemas, Force of Nature, The Dry 2. I really highly recommend everyone watch this movie. Not only is it a great crime thriller filmmaking here, it's a great psychological drama, excellent performances. And I always find it a pleasure, Rob, I don't know about you, but someone who grew up watching Eric on Full Frontal all those years ago, and remember his small stint as a late night show host and his trajectory into movies both here and overseas. It's always a pleasure to watch him on the screen. I don't know, it just feels like it's like watching a family member in a kind of weird, kind of certain way. I think that was a great performance
So
here
good.
as well. So congrats to you, and congrats to your cast and crew. You did a great job here, and I can't wait to talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, terrific to talk to you again, and I look forward to chatting about my next film.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.